Hey, thanks for being here. I'm going to start a series of Father's Day gifts, and the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to paint a blank journal, just the cover for Father's Day. And I just thought this would be a neat idea. We're going to paint a line on there. So if you'd like to get some pen and paper, I'm going to give you some color choices. If you can't find this paint or whatever, use your best version. Use what you already have. I've got a selection of a few paints, and I'll just introduce them as we are painting. I'm using acrylics today. This happens to be a shiny surface. If you see some of the background still showing, don't worry about it. In the end, it will all be good. So I'm going to paint this, and we're going to do it quite quickly. Or at least I think we are. I have my paint brushes. I've got some flatheads, some various sizes. Just get your paint brushes out and, make sure you just have some flathead ones. We're doing some detailed work today. I have a small paint palette from the Dollar Tree if I need it, and I won't be using it much because I am actually an artist that always works out of their lids, and I would like to say I'm self-taught. Yeah, for many years I'm self-taught, but my mom actually taught me to paint. And I can talk to you a little bit about that as I'm painting. Anyway, I'm Jacqueline. Hope you choose to subscribe to my channel. I'm new on YouTube. I'm having a blast doing it, having lots of fun. First thing we're going to do is we're going to make the face of the lion. And we're going to take a shape. We got a dry brush. And the color I'm using here is you want to choose, this happens to be a Folk Art brand, and it's yellow ochre, but something similar, kind of a mustard color. Oh, by the way, you need your cup of water and also an old towel. So we're going to make just the lion's head, and I'm going to start, we're going to cover this guy up. And if you know who that guy is, who is it? It's Shakespeare, isn't it? Yeah, William Shakespeare. So anyway, we're going to make, first of all, a heart. My paint's quite thick. And like I said, my brush is dry. And we're painting on a shiny surface. You can see that the background is kind of coming through here. But anyway, we're going to paint kind of a heart, okay? And just pulling the paint down is what we're going to do. And then we're going to pretend like he has some cheeks. Or we're not going to pretend, that lion actually does have some cheeks. So we're going to just go out from that heart a little bit. And then he has his little muzzle. So we're going to do a shape similar to that. And then we're going to give him a chin, and a fairly big chin. Now, you're probably right now, you've just gotten started with me and you're like, how that's going to turn into a lion, I'm not really sure. Her paint is all streaky. Everything's, showing through. Bear with me. Stay with me. You're going to have a shape similar to this, okay? If it's not, that's okay. This is just practice. As I paint here, you'll see some professional artists would say it's bad habits. Okay, that's fine. I'm not a professional artist. I'm just here to have fun and to teach some classes. So if I dip paint brushes and I don't clean up my brushes right away and I reuse brushes or whatever, that's okay. It's okay with me if it's okay with you. Okay, anyway, we have the face of our lion. And then we're going to dip into a brown. And I'm actually going to go with a lighter brown. This is the cream coat, and it's Territorial Beige, which is really interesting that we would have a name Territorial when we're painting a lion's head. And I'm going to give the lion a couple of ears. So we're going to go out just below maybe an inch, half an inch here. And I'm going to give him a couple of ears in brown. We are going to be going over this, so don't worry. if your paint isn't going on thick. What I want you to do right now is make sure that this ear is attached, if you will, to the head. Okay, we've got some streaking going on, but don't worry about it. Just so your ears are about the same, okay? Give or take a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go with that same color, and I'm going to get a brush that is more of a round brush, and I'm going back into that paint. Again, it's a dry brush, and we are just going to go around the outside of this lion's head. And all I want you to do is to make some, what do you want to say, some lines, some streaks that are not in a row, just kind of, here and there, different sizes. It doesn't matter if they're round. It doesn't matter how thick they are. You're just going to take that brown and you're going to just pull that paint out from that lion's head. Okay, and it doesn't even have to meet the head right at this point. Now, if I had my dryer handy, I would be drying this for you. We're going to be working with some wet paint, of course, today, just to save time, because if this was drying, it would take a while. I have tried to put on a hair dryer or a heat gun, and it makes so darn much noise when I'm painting that I didn't really want to go there if I didn't have to. So we're going to start out with that, okay? And then the next color that we're going to introduce, I'm going to put that brush in the water there. The next color I'm going to introduce is this orange, and it's the Crafters brand. Look at only 49 cents at Hobby Lobby, and it's the terracotta or terracotta. I guess it's terracotta there. I don't have my glasses on. It must be terracotta, not terracotta. That's a new made-up word that I made. Anyway, we're going to dip into that color with another dry brush. And what I want you to do is, we're still thinking of the mane. So we're going to go and we're just going to add that orange. We are just pulling that out and let it lie. And again, you're not coming by every brown piece of fur that's coming out, just a few. And you can even double it up if you want, like 2 or 3 oranges in one space. And you're just pulling that orange out. Went a little bit over his ear there. We're covering up Mr. Shakespeare here. Okay, so you have some brown and orange going on there. Now you're going to pick a very dark brown, like a black brown. And this is a burnt umber. Happens to be the Cream Coat brand. I'm almost out of it, actually. Grab another brush, a round tip, and we're going to dip into that, and we're going to continue with this mane. And so we're going to kind of fill in some blank spots there with our dark brown, pulling that dark brown out. This is kind of a, what would you say, an abstract lion. Of course, you wouldn't normally see those orange colors in a lion's normal mane. Anyway, not usually. But our guy here is, he's special. Let's just say he's special. Okay, so just as you're going through, just bringing out that brown. Now, what I want you to do at this time is go back now, and as we're trying to let this dry, I'm going to go back to this lighter brown that we used. This beige color brown. Well, what was it? Let me see. It was the Territorial beige. And we're going to dip a brush into there. And then what I want you to do is that this color is going to come back in some places. But what I want you to do now is I want you to go around his face a little bit. And I just want you to kind of put that brown in there, so it's like attaching to the face, if you will. Okay, just in different places where you see a little gap there going on. You want to try and fill in that gap, if that makes any sense, even if you're covering up the same color that you had used. You see what I'm doing there? Just making sure that it's attaching to his face. Any place that it didn't attach, even if you're picking up other paint, the point is you want it to attach to his face. Now I know this looks quite like the mess at this point, but let me tell you that it's going to be very beautiful when we get done with it. And this is kind of a fast tutorial, right? It's just attaching there a little bit. There we go. There we go. So it has a little bit more finished look on it. Now I'm going to go back at this time into the original color that we used, which was that kind of mustard yellow that we had. And I am going to kind of cover it up. It's had a chance to dry a little bit. So I'm going to add some of that yellow back in a little bit just to make it a little bit thicker there. And go over that. Don't worry if your paintbrush has picked up, but you just saw a little bit of orange come into my paintbrush. I also see that I got some this paint. I should probably clean my container before I put it away the last time, because I've got a little bit of dried paint that's coming into it. But that's okay. By the time we're done, we're going to have this thing covered quite a few times, so that's good. So can you kind of see the face coming up through here a little bit now? Possibly? Kind of, sort of? Okay, now we are going to get out our black. Any black will do as long as it's a solid black. Here we are, Crafters again. And I'm going to bring in black. And I am going to use, let me see where my paintbrush is. I want to use... I'm going to use, that might be a little bit too big. Excuse a minute, I got to hunt for what I want here. I'm looking for, that's what I'm looking for. I'm actually looking for an angled brush. Now this is just my preference, okay? I'm not saying, if you have one, I would suggest to try it. It gets pretty easy when you use an angled brush for this, because we're making some lines and doing some eyes. It's just what I prefer instead of using a liner at this point. And I am going to put my brushes in my water now so I don't forget. And I am going to put some black in this little palette here just so I work with it a little bit and have a little bit more control of that black. So what I'm doing right now is this is the top of his forehead, and what we're going to do is we're going to look towards the bottom of that ear, and I'm actually going to make a couple of lines coming down here because I am going to add in his eye. Okay, and you can see I'm dragging the yellow through, and that's just fine. And then we're going to start over here at the bottom of this ear, and we're going to make another eye. And at this point, you're not worried about them being like even Steven. And then I'm going to come down here from this point down, and I am just going to come on down here because we're going to be looking at a nose coming down, similar to this. Now I can see right now I want this eye a little bigger because I do know what the end result is, and I'm going to fill it in a little blacker and a little larger. Okay, right there. And then the other thing, I told you that this is eventually going to be his nose. I'm going to, at this time, I know you think this is very strange, but I'm going to give him a couple of nostrils. And when you're making the nostrils, I don't want you to make them the same, like matchy-matchy. If you go to the mirror and you look at your own face, you'll find that your nostrils are actually not the same size. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to put this down because it's hard to do it with it up. I'm going to go around with that same brush, and I am just going to, I call it come hither there. My husband laughs at me. He goes, what does that mean? I'm like, I'm not really sure what it means, but it's what I call it. Come hither or there kind of means just kind of do your own thing and go around this lion's face. Remember how we had that? And it can be strong lines or small lines, thin lines, whatever you want, but just give it a little bit of an outline so you can get a little bit of control of that. And then the other thing I want you to do is I want you to do the same thing with those ears. And I want you to think of them being kind of fuzzy ears. So not necessarily a straight line, but just outlining them, and it's going to define those ears for you right there. Okay. And then the next thing we're going to do is that he does have a mouth. These are his cheeks. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come up to the center of his nose is what we're doing, and meeting it down this way. You see that there? And then at this time, what I'd like you to do is just bring that down. Bring that line down into a darker area. You see that right there? And then what you're going to do is you're just going to put a little line here and a little line there. And there you've got it started. Now, at this time, what I want you to do is I want you to go back to these ears. And what we're going to do is I'm going to put that black paintbrush down for a moment. And I am going to grab that dark brown that we had. What did we call it? I am talking about the burnt umber. And you're going back to these ears. And what I'd like you to do is just put in a center to that ear. Okay? And I want you to just attach it there, kind of a roundish circle. Again, they're not going to be matching. Bring it right up to that black line. Pull it down a little bit. Give it character. Work with the paint. And you're just going to fill that in. The most important thing right here on this step is to make sure that that center of the lion's ear is actually attaching to his head. Okay? So you've got that. Now, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to let that rest for just a moment. And I'm going to go back. I had a yellow paintbrush here somewhere that I think I put into the water. So let's get that out. By the way, also when I paint, I always try to have 2 containers of water. That way I don't have to get up and change water when I'm in the midst and the flow of creating. We're going to double back and we're going to go into that yellow that we started out with. And again, as a reminder, it's yellow ochre. Is that how you say it? I'm not really sure, to be honest. I suppose I should know that. But we're going to add yellow into his mane. So we are going to start not attached at this point to that head of our lion. We are going to fill in very lightly where you see fit. Some bold or some thin lines. It's at this point, you got to have a feel for it. Just as you're doing this, not really looking to the end result, looking at where it makes sense for you to add a little bit of yellow. The yellow is a highlighting color, and you can go with bold lines. I prefer the lighter lines, but pull out, and again, like, don't attach that to his head if you can help it. If you do, it's no big deal. If your brush is running into wet paint, that's okay. That's absolutely okay. That's actually what we want. So, whoops, I did run into the black there. I will fix it. I do see that I have an area to fix right here because, yeah, we'll go back there. So can you see our lion is starting to form? Okay, hope he dries fairly quick. While we're at it, go back with your black paintbrush, and we're going to go back to this ear. So we have a lighter brown, a darker brown, and then right in the middle we're going to do a black. And what I want you to do here is kind of do a sideways teardrop type of a feel. In other words, a little thinner at the bottom than it is at the top. And we're giving that inner ear a little bit of character. Okay, we're starting there. Okay, now what we're going to do is let those paintbrushes rest. Whoops. And we are going to get all those colors out of the way, and we are going to reach for our white. And again, today I'm just using white. These are inexpensive paints. You know, you can actually even pick up paints at your thrift store. All my supplies are usually thrifted, sometimes even paintbrushes, sometimes even paint. If I was to buy anything, it would be the fresh paint, but I'm not opposed at all to buying, you know, taking a risk is really what you're doing. You're just taking a risk and hoping that that paint's going to be okay and not spoil. Paint does spoil. It does. Okay, we're going to add some white right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to think about our precious lion here. And we're going to give him some highlights. So right here by his nose, you want a fairly dry brush, not too wet. And you're going to start by his nose, and you're just going to start pulling white from the nose. Okay, and then we're also down on his chin here, we're going to pull some white in here also. Now, what you can see is that my paint is very wet, so do you see how it's pulling? That is okay. In fact, at this time, I'm going to work with it because it's pulling, and I actually like that. And you'll see why in a little while as we get going here with our guy. And then I'm going to get rid of some of that black in that paintbrush so we just have white. And then I'm going to also add some white highlights up here, just a little bit on his head. And I think I'll bring a little bit of white in this area and maybe just a little bit coming down. Oh, dear goodness. Okay, so we got a little mistake there. And that's where the paint pulled, and I don't want the paint pulling there, that's for sure. So sooner than later, grab another paintbrush and get that yellow back on that nose, because we don't want that black spot there, that's for sure. But this action down here is actually just fine. It's absolutely just fine. So we've added our white, and I'm actually going to, I think I want more white on there, so let me get my brush, and on his forehead here I think I want a little bit more white than I had there. Okay, so that kind of look, again, not literally like matchy on that. So we've got the white, and the other place we're going to put the white at this time, I'm using a brush that's quite large here. Just for demo purposes, you'd probably want to use a smaller brush, but I want you to take a white white, boy, trying to describe what you're actually doing and doing it is another thing. You're going to bring some white under this eye and let it rest as it does. Even if there's some black in there, that's what I want. I want you to get some white in there, okay? So our guy is looking pretty good. At this time, pretty soon, you're going to start seeing him come to life. And what I want you to do now is get your black out again, somewhat of a dry brush, and we're going to work on this area of the mouth. And so remember how we had pulled that paint down? We're actually going to work with that a little bit more. And we're going to ruin our solid black line there a little bit to make it a little bit more furry looking. And so we're coming in here and we're just defining those lines a little bit more. But he has fur, right? So you want to soften that a little bit by giving him what he actually has, is he has a little bit of fur. So that's what I'm having you do, is just go around that black line that you had that was fairly solid. And let's bring this down a little bit here. And you can almost just pull from the paint that you already have there. And you're just bringing your lion, making him look a little bit like he has fur on him. And you do that by just the paintbrush going this way and that. At this time, I'm going to get a smaller brush because we're going to do a little bit more detailed work. There we go. And I'm going to dip back into my black, and I'm going to solid this line up a little bit here that's above his eye. Yeah, that's one of the challenges when you're trying to teach something, especially on a video, and you're trying to describe what you're doing. That's probably one of the hardest things. So I am defining his eye a little bit more is what I'm doing here. And I'm going to pull this up a little bit. That's actually what I'm doing. And at this time, I'm going to bring this down by his nose a little bit more, defining that nose of his right there. Okay, and then the next thing we're going to do is we do have 2 shades of pink. And those shades of pink, I want you to start with the softer shade, the softer pink. And get your brush going. The brush I'm using is not very good, but we're going to go with it. And I just want you to put a little pink above his nose. And if the black drags into it, that's okay. And a little bit too much drug into it. I kind of like the pink and the black together. That's okay. And we're going to bring it down into this area, forming his little nose there. And then I want that nose to stand out a little bit. So I'm going in with the darker pink. It's cream coat and it's fuchsia. The first pink I used was a pink chiffon by Craft Smart. So I'm going to go in with, I think this is going to be the last day for this paintbrush, unless I let it dry and use it as a hard brush for a project. That would be good too. So I'm bringing in a little bit more of that pink that's coming in there. And yeah, there we go. Just a little bit of pink there for his nose. Can you see we actually have a lion coming about now? He's coming to life. Do you guys ever name your paintings, what you're doing? Sometimes I do, just for the fun of it. I wanted to get something for his name that would be more unique, I guess, than something like Leo. Leo the lion. So we're letting this dry now for a little bit. Now I'm going to go in with some of that brown that I had from before, and I'm going to work on his chin for a moment. I want to bring some of this in to add, it feels like maybe shadows coming down in here. And if your brush is still pulling some of that paint, that's great. That's just great. Pulling some brown down in here. I really like that. And then I'm going to actually pull some brown right around these cheeks a little bit, giving kind of a shadow. And this is where you're kind of blending your paints actually together. And if, that's the beauty about having wet paint, because you can pull it a little bit. And that's exactly what I'm doing, adding this brown here. I like it right in here too, under the nose. You see what I'm doing there? I like it. I like it. Okay, and I'm also going to take, believe it or not, some of this orange, but I'm going to lighten it up with some white so it's a little bit less bold. And I'm going up to the forehead to add a little shadowing in this area. And we're going to pull this down a little bit. Oops, I'm pulling the black and I didn't want to do that. So how you can fix that, I make mistakes all the time. You probably do too. If you approach art by, always trying to be perfect, sometimes it's not fun. So I'm doing this by a dry brush, and I'm going with the flow because the dry brush is pulling that black in a beautiful, beautiful way. And a mistake is not necessarily a mistake now. So there we go. Yeah. Okay, I'm liking it. I'm liking it. Just playing with it a little bit. Adding a little bit more of that black in there. Giving him some black on his nose. Why not? Why not? And while we're working with black, how are we doing on our time here? I would say we have about maybe, I don't know, if all goes well, maybe 5 minutes left or so, if you can hang in with me. Please subscribe to my channel. I don't do all painting. I do all kinds of things. I have inspirational videos on for you too. Everything about how to do a craft fair. Just all kinds of things. So, yeah, hit subscribe. Tell your friends. I'm new on YouTube. I'm having fun. And that's the main purpose. I actually just enjoy coming on here and playing and just being with you. Leave your comments. Tell me what you think. I am not a professional. I am a craft teacher. And like I said, pretty much self-taught. Except for my mama. My mama was an artist, so I learned a lot by looking over mama's shoulders. Okay, now we are going to do these beautiful eyes, and I'm going to dip into the orange that we had. That's the terracotta. And am I still using this crappy paintbrush? I think I am. And I'm going to give him some eyes, and his eye is going to be orange. And if it drags some black, that's okay. Go with it. We can always go back. And I'm going to go back because I do want more orange than what I'm seeing there. I want this part to be a little bit bolder than what it is. A little bit more solid. And I'm going to... Do you see how it's not necessarily round? And I don't want you to match the eyes. Like, I don't want 2 round circles. Okay, see what we've got going there? Okay, now with that same paintbrush, I traded out the crappy one. I am actually going to go back to my pink, believe it or not. And we're going to work a little bit at this time with his cheeks. And believe it or not, I'm going to bring some pink into this. Pink, pink, pink. Just some soft pink coming down on his cheeks. And the paintbrush is going to go the opposite way with this pink. And I'm going to kind of tuck it there. And then, where's my water? And then I'm going to take that pretty orange that we were talking about before, the same that's on his eye. Oops, that's too much. That's way too much. So we're going to fix that with a dry brush. Dry brushes fix a lot of things. A lot of boo-boos. That was enough of that orange. I don't want much more. Oh, we got some of the black coming through, and that's okay. Back in the orange, and I'm going to give him more orange over in this area. And this is just a playing with it, right? It's how you see fit. Okay, and then we're going back to this very hot pink. What was it called? Flamingo, I think it was. Is that what it was called? Fuchsia. Fuchsia. And I'm going to bring some cheek in here for him. And I'm going very bold with this. and I did that on purpose. Okay, and then back into the water, and we will find another dry brush, and you want it to be a little one, and then I'm just going to work with that. I'm going to just dab some of that paint up and bring that pink. I do want it to be kind of solid, more solid on one cheek here, and there still is too much. So I'm going to dab that down a little bit. Now you can see at this point that some of the paint is lifting, and I actually want that. I want that to happen. Okay, let's go back with a lighter brush. If you had a liner, you could use the liner. I think I have a smaller brush here. Let me just get it. And I'm going back into my black. And already I got too much on there. I can see that. And I'm going to do a line to form his nose. It's a little circle, or a half circle, if you will. It comes around. And then the nostril, bringing it more down. Now we can define it a little bit more. And we'll put our little line in there on his nose. And we're almost done. Almost. You'll be kind of surprised here in a moment, though, what we're going to do. We're going to give him a couple of eyeballs. And we're going to put them fairly center. Oops, my paint's very, very wet on that eyeball. So I'm going to have to put... And when I do this, I just let the paint go where it wants to until you can move it around and you can say, there is my eye. Until you can see your subject matter, in this case, a lion, starting to come to life. Okay. And then at this time, we are going to also dip into a color that we're going to introduce right now. And this is what they call a silver marlin, and it's an acrylic by Folk Art. And I have a square head, and believe it or not, where we're going with this, you might have thought it might have been the eye, but it's not. This is going to be just a few strokes, believe it or not, into our mane. And I didn't use this earlier because the paint wasn't dry enough to introduce that color in. This is kind of a highlight color. It's a surprise color. So you want just a couple of bold strokes, but not a tremendous amount. And again, this is just a feel for it, like where you think that it might feel good. Okay, so here we have our lion. Now what we're going to do is we are now going to take a paintbrush and oops, I need a couple of lines in here that I'm not quite happy with yet. I got to get this cheek over here a little bit for this big guy. There we go. And I'm going to just do a couple of little dots in here. Now, if you wanted to add whiskers, you actually could, but I'm not going to do that. But what I am going to do is now I am going to pull my black and my water together. Dry paintbrush we started with, dip into some water. You got to get the feel for this, but I am going to just kind of use the water to move my paints around. In other words, I don't want that face so defined. So I'm almost pulling the black, if you will, what I can get out of it, this first trip around. I'm losing my black line and blending it in so that there is actually a mane that is happening. Can you see that? We're pulling out, starting from his face and just pulling it. Okay. Just working with it, pulling your paint, giving him some beautiful definition. I did lose my black line over here while I was pulling, so that's okay. Just put it back in. Put it back in. Okay, and just pull lightly. I was pulling too hard, so it didn't work that way. Okay. There you go. Now, the very surprising part about our lion here is that we are now going to give him some real definition. And remember how I told you it didn't matter that the paint was pulling through? Because we're going to use the end of a paintbrush. And we want that now to actually pull through. We want to give him more definition. You can bring this down a little bit. Kind of roughen that little old lion up a little bit. You can even take it into his mane by pulling out with the paint and allowing those extra lines, if you will, to define that lion even more. It almost acts like a black paint pulling through. I'm pushing pretty hard on that and just pretending like it's fur, and you're going around and you're just giving him more and more definition to his mane. Whatever happened to Mr. Shakespeare? He went away, didn't he? He did go away. If you want to do something similar to this to give the illusion of some whiskers there that are just kind of sailing off into nowhere, that's okay too. And a little bit of definition on that nose coming up, pushing that brush to get the eyes to come out a little bit more definition there. Do you see what I'm doing with that paintbrush? Just making him a little bit rougher. Okay, and then these ears, we're going to do a little of that there. Nope, I can't get that to move as much, but we'll get there. And the other ear. And here, my friends, we have a very, very abstract lion for you. I have painted another one also, and I'll show you him at this time so you can see the two different lions. And those are journals for Father's Day, kind of abstract and different and fun. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.